Hello everyone and welcome back to the Babbling Irons channel. Today it's myself and Mike and something different from transfers. I'm sure you're all sick of it at the moment with what's going on, but we're going to go through our Premier League predictions for this season coming up and a few of the cup competitions that are going to happen as well. Before we do that, Mike, we hit 200 subscribers, so another nice milestone, and another massive thank you to everyone that's been watching. Really,
yeah, massively appreciate it. It's great that people are actually listening to what we have to say, so it's all good.
I mean, yeah, it means we're doing something right, which is good. As I say that, Mike's cut out. Perfect timing, but he'll be back. His internet's been playing up a little bit, but yeah, we're back. We're good.
I'm back. My internet is not great upstairs, so it may drop in and out, unfortunately.
I was just saying how well we're doing and on the up, and then that happened. I was like, oh, shock.
Well, it's typical, isn't it? The moment you say you do well, something drops and goes.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to go through our Premier League predictions for today. We're going to give you our full table. Sloth's not here, but he has done his predictions as well. So we're going to go through those as well together. We've got a nice little graphic for you so you can see what's going on. But before we kind of show the graphic and what we're going to do, we're going to basically go from relegation all the way to the top and kind of compare how our tables are and why we've given certain teams certain situations. But it's difficult because there's still a month left of the window, especially being a West Ham fan. There's still, everyone knows there's still business that we need to do before we can kind of predict certain things. But I've gone personally, I don't know about you, Mike, but my table is based on the assumption that we are going to sign a couple of players. And for other clubs as well, I've done it, clubs like Chelsea, I've kind of put them in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I went a bit gut feel with it. The problem I always have with these is that you have a month left of the window, so you can start off badly in your first 2 or 3 games and then get 1 or 2 players and your season changes. So it's always tricky at this stage to look at, but based on, I just kind of went for a bit of gut feel. But we'll go through what my gut was telling me till we go through this.
Well, let's start with the relegation. Touch wood, we ain't going to be anywhere near that. Hopefully we're kind of past that point now as a club. There's probably teams that are more favourite to go down, and there's obviously clubs that were in the Premier League last season. You've got Fulham, Bournemouth, and Nottingham Forest that have come up. They're all going to be the favourites for the drop, but there are some other teams in there. Well, before we kind of look at our relegation, who can you see out of those 3 promoted teams doing the best next season?
I think of the promoted ones, it's probably harder to look past, say, Nottingham Forest. I think they've made a lot of kind of buys, so it's very much potential that they can go the way of Fulham did before, when it looked like, well, they've been should have been announced in the market. They've gone for some good experience, got some good players, and then it kind of went. If they can get them to all blend together at Forest, then that's great. I do feel they've maybe done a little bit of a disservice to the players that got them there. They've gone, I think, about 13 players so far, and there's even talk that they want more. So they've gone out and basically tried to buy a brand new 11. So they've kind of just pushed all of the guys that got them there to one side and just gone and replaced. So, it's a bit unfair on those guys. It shows a bit of a lack of loyalty to them. But again, if you look at the likes of, say, Norwich in the past, even Fulham, who have obviously been a bit of a yo-yo recently, that level of loyalty is not going to keep you in the Premier League, because unless you have such a great team ethic that you can do a Sheffield United, but again, they showed the following year that they then went out into the market and it all kind of imploded on itself and they got relegated.
Yeah.
So you kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. You would probably argue maybe the most equipped in terms of the types of players they've got and the variation of players that they have. The question is whether they can mould them all together enough this season in which to get them through. I think they're probably going to rely quite a lot on their home form. Obviously, Bournemouth and Fulham do have experience, but I don't necessarily see enough at this point in their squads that kind of convinces me they're gonna stay up. Mitrovic just seems to be so appropriate for Fulham because he is fantastic in the Championship. Put him in the Premier League, and there are little flashes, but that is unfortunately for them. That's all there is normally for over the course of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to call because you've got the likes of Scott Parker coming up, Steve Cooper, another one, pretty highly regarded in terms of what they can go on to achieve. You know, they're still fairly inexperienced at the top level. So, especially with the squads that they have, you know, it's so easy for a championship team to come up and not spend anything thinking they're kind of ready. But the gap between the championship and the Premier League now is huge. It's absolutely huge. And you know, Forest, to be fair to them, they had like 7 or 8 loan players last season that have clearly, you know, obviously gone. So they did need to bring in players. Like they did need to make the signings. But again, there's a danger of, you know, a complete overhaul going into the Premier League for the first time in God knows how many years. It is going to be dependent on home form, like you say, and whether the likes of Jesse Lingard have come in and will be able to perform. But let's take a look at our bottom 3 anyway, because they are slightly different, and I actually only got one of the promoted teams in there, so it'll be interesting to see how different they are. But this is kind of an overview, so don't bother too much with the top of the league. We'll just focus on the relegation. But here we go. Hopefully this shows. Yep, there we go. So mine on the left, yours in the middle, and Sloths is also on the right. So we've all got Bournemouth in there. You guys have both gone with Fulham bottom. You've actually got identical bottoms. Actually, we've all got Leeds and Bournemouth in there, but I've got Southampton. So let's start with, you know, Fulham at the bottom. What makes you put Bournemouth just above Fulham, for example?
I just think Bournemouth team hasn't necessarily changed a huge amount since their last relegation. I just feel that even though they finished below Fulham in the league, in the Championship, I just feel they have a bit more nous in the Premier League now. But I just don't think that there is enough in there. I just struggle to see with those guys that who are going to be their out-and-out goal scorers. I know people go, well, there's Mitrovic. Mitrovic he just hasn't really done it in the Premier League. He had first season Fulham come up. He looked good, I think, for the first half of the year, and then it just kind of nosedived. And I think even Scott Parker even said when he was managing Fulham that he needs a more technical player. Obviously, that was in his system at Fulham to play up top. Yeah. And I think that's a bit of a snapshot into Mitrovic in that he is a brute that suits that league. And there's no disrespect in saying that. You are a quality Championship striker. He's too good for the Championship, but he's just maybe not quite as good in the Premier League. He probably is a striker that fits maybe that mid-table or bottom to mid-table kind of striker. But again, I just don't see him scoring as many for Fulham. And I think as we saw when he was out, if you can take him out of the game, then the goals dry up. And they've also lost Fabio Cannavaro, who's obviously now gone to Liverpool. So that has lost a massive creative outlet there as well. So I just struggle with those guys. Bournemouth, I just think there's a little bit more about them, a little bit more nous. But yeah, let's just say it was more gut feels than really kind of taking, you know, deep dives into each team. They're just teams that I just don't have confidence in, regardless of their finish in the Championship, because the difference in the Premier League to the Championship is big. It is getting bigger every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so tough to call because for me, I've got Southampton and Leeds in there. We've all got Leeds. We'll talk about in a second. But the reason I haven't put Fulham in there is purely on the fact that Mitrovic can carry on into the Premier League. I don't think he's going to be this amazing striker. But like you said, if he was at a team, I don't know, mid-table, I feel like he'd be good there. I feel like he's comfortable enough to play at that level. I think he's comfortable enough to play and score, say, 8 to 10 goals in the Premier League for a decent team. Whether he can do that for Fulham again, I don't know. But from the promoted teams, I feel like Bournemouth haven't really strengthened at all. And Fulham's squads, to me, on paper, is a lot better. And obviously, Forest is a complete unknown entity, which is why I've gone 17th. So I think for me, I don't know why. I don't know why I have faith in Fulham. I just feel like they might just scrape it. And the only reason as well is because I just think Southampton, which we're going to just talk about now, I think they're going to really struggle. I've seen you've got them 14th and Slough put them 12th. Looking at their squads, I really think that they are going to struggle. And we've seen glimpses of it in the past where they go on these horrific runs. I think a couple of seasons ago they started really well, and were absolutely shambolic up after October, November. So I guess again it's so hard to call because they might go and make 2 or 3 really good signings. But you look at their strikers. I don't see where their goals are going to come from necessarily in a consistent level. So yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Southampton? Do you think they could get dragged into it?
I think Southampton are one of those teams that they'll always have a point in the season where they'll go on a bit of a run that pulls them away. Much like how we, like under the likes of Village and stuff, where we were basically down there for a lot, and then we'll get a bit of a run together, and then we'll pull away, and then we're safe. That's kind of how I feel Southampton are. I think they try and play some good football under Hassan Hutel, but they're just one of those teams where like you say, sometimes you look at them and go, well, where are the goals? Armstrong might get more game time this season, so he may see a few more. Obviously, they do have Che Adams, who had a little burst and then kind of fell off again. There's always a few goals in their team. Is it Aribo, who they just got from Rangers? Again, a nice creative outlet. So they have ways in which to score. Obviously, you have Ward-Prowse as well for his set pieces, whether that be shots on goal or what have you. So there are ways in which they can create, and I do believe there are other people that can kind of lighten that load. I don't think there's maybe a out-and-out striker, but I just think there's enough in there to see them through and guide them through. I don't think they're maybe going to blow everyone away. They have made some young, smart signings for the future. But again, it's which way do those signings go? Do they kind of step to the challenge and play and perform and, come out as hidden gems that other teams should have gone for? Or do they maybe a little bit shrinking violets and kind of not necessarily make the grade immediately?
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough to call. For me, I just think maybe 19th was a bit harsh, but I just think, looking at this here, we've all got Leeds 18th. I think from that, we can kind of see losing Rafinha and Phillips is absolutely massive. And, the way I kind of look at it is if you took Bowen and Rice out of our team, how many positions are we going to drop off? And, their recruitment's been okay. I would say they've made a couple of decent signings, but again, they're unpredictable ones. And Jesse Marsch as a manager, still question marks about how he, progresses this team from, coming in and fighting relegation with, 2 or 3 months to go to now having a full pre-season with a few new signings, but also losing Rafinha, such a key player for them. And Phillips, we saw the impact of his absence last season. So I just think, I think Leeds could stay up, but I think it was honestly a coin flip between Leeds and Forest for me. It can go either way.
Yeah.
I can see you've got Everton in 17th and Slough as well. So
yeah, I think for me, those two were a kind of coin flip. I looked at Forest and just thought, I just think they just have enough. And that bounce of coming up from the playoffs, it'll be a bit like Brentford. They'll get some big results and take some scalps because they'll be up for it. Everton, they're in an absolute dire state. It's just been it's been announced, hasn't it, or they've confirmed he's out for the first game. So it looks like Everton trying to play it down in Calvert-Lewin, but that could be up to 3 months that he's out of the season. Obviously, they may be signing Onana. However, if that goes through or not, we don't know. But that seems an odd move when you've now just lost your star striker, and you've just sold your star striker. So, in combination with the fact that they've hemorrhaged money for years, they've just gone and sold their star striker. The Calvert-Lewin's out for 3 months, and they don't seem to be strengthening that position. Obviously, they're probably going to try and have a Brozier on loan, but Lampard doesn't have his alliances at Chelsea anymore, so I don't think that's going to be as simple as it possibly could have been had that been Abramovich. And I just kind of look at Everton and go again, defensively, they probably have enough over Leeds. I think with Leeds as well, Leeds could be a team that does all right. This is the problem that I have with Leeds in that Jesse Marsch has bought 2 players that he knows very well in Aronson and also Kamara. Kamara's a bit like a Kante, so having him in the centre will be that terrier that they need. So he does actually kind of cover what Phillips does. He's maybe not as expansive as a player, but he's tireless and he runs around and obviously got the creative element in Aronson. So Leeds, you kind of look at and go, I don't see where the defence has improved. That was weak again last year. There is quite a bit of naivety in their back line, I still think. Probably have just about enough creativity, and they do have Bamford is feeling it and he's back. Then he'll score goals and Rodrigo can score as well. So I do think that they have the players to stay up, but it is literally a coin flip between them and Everton. And I think that's the thing. And also, Everton haven't really done much business yet. So, yeah, the way I look at it is Leeds have players that are unknown quantity. So it's hard to justify them staying up above Everton. My gut feel is that Everton might be the team to go because of how they were last year. But, you know, it's always tricky at this stage of the season because you really don't know until people start playing games.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I think I put Everton I put Everton 13th. I think they'll comfortably stay up, to be honest. I think, you know, between like 15th or 16th and 12th, there isn't normally that many points difference anyway. So those kind of teams can kind of get muddled in. But for me, I think Everton's squad, you know, you look at it in terms of the players they have good enough players. You know, they have, you know, last season, their squad was, you know, under Rafa Benitez at the start, it was challenging for top 6 and top 4. You know, people like Gary Neville saying they're going to do something special this season. So, yes, they've lost Richarlison. Yes, Dominic Calvert-Lewin isn't someone they can rely upon as a striker. But if you look at, you know, the kind of players that they do have, you know, Damari Gray, a very good player. Anthony Gordon looks like this could be a really big season for him. You know, if you get Dele Alli back on song, you have the players, you know, and, you know, the likes of Onana being linked with them, Brozier on loan could happen. I think they'll get a striker if they need one. You know, something like Brozier on loan would work well for them. So I'm not concerned about Everton, to be honest. I think they'll be absolutely fine. They've made a couple of decent signings already, you know, from Burnley. So, yeah, I think under Lampard, I mean, he is the favourite to be the first manager sacked, which, you know, tells you a lot about people's expectations of Everton and him as a manager.
I think it's more about that. If you look at Chelsea under Lampard, there was naivety in those tactics and how they played. You can see that last year in Everton, there's naivety in there. I think some of their players tend to switch off and they're not necessarily can do it for a full 90 minutes. Now, that could change this season. But again, I just look at Everton and think there's not a good balance in that squad. There's a lot. You've named a lot of players, but you could also attribute to a lot of those consistency is a problem. And the moment you then add in maybe a couple of bad results, all of a sudden, if you've got players that have consistency issues and who are confidence players, all of a sudden, naivety in tactics will get exposed. And that's why I look at Everton and just go, it's just a bit of a mishmash of players. They've got a lot of wingers that they're trying to mould into strikers, and it just isn't working. Iwobi got moved into centre midfield last year. Fair enough, he did quite well when he went to centre midfield. But again, they are grabbing square pegs and shoving them into round holes, and you know that's kind of how I look at them. A bit quite higgledy-piggledy kind of team. So that's why I just can't look at them as a team that's going to be, say, mid-table at the moment. They might do that over the course of the season, but at this point, it still looks much like the Everton team of last year. And there's just a lot of odd jigsaw pieces that they're trying to just kind of ram together.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's going to say a lot about Lampard as a manager this season. You know, they haven't been able to spend the money he probably wanted. You know, we saw at Chelsea he had the transfer ban and brought through some youth players, which worked really well for him. Having Everton where they are now, where people are expecting them to be fighting in that relegation, if he does get a comfortable mid-table finish with, you know, limited spending this summer, and he's able to, you know, be tactically flexible, you know, recognise that Everton aren't a team that can play this, you know, really nice, neat football out from the back, that will show a lot about him as a manager and how far he can go in his career. Because, you know, it's easy to have this philosophy that you want to play, you know, at Chelsea, like a team like Chelsea. It can be a lot easier. You know, you have the players to do it. But a team like Everton, where, again, limited spending in the transfer window, it's going to be telling, but we'll see because I think being favourite to be sacked, it does show that the majority of fans do see Everton as the weak link. So, and Connor's mentioned in the chat here, he thinks Fulham, Bournemouth, and then one of Saints, Everton, or Brentford will go down. And we haven't spoke about Brentford, so let's speak about them. Losing Ericsson.
Yeah, the losing Ericsson is a big one. That he came in and he really kind of galvanised them when they were looking like they were losing, not their focus, but they were losing that edge that they had when they came up, because they came up with that chip on the shoulder of that, with the team coming up from the playoffs. We're not going to be here to be, whipping boys. They had a good chip on their shoulder, and they took a few scouts early on. Obviously, they started to die on, and once Ericsson came in, it kind of rejuvenated that team and gave them something. So it's a big player to replace. Obviously, they're looking to buy Damsgaard, which, in all honesty, is, if you're looking for an Ericsson replacement, I don't think you can find any more of an Ericsson replacement as such, other than the guy who replaced him in the Denmark team.
Yeah.
But with Damsgaard, I think we've got to caveat that is he's had a terrible season with injuries and not played as much. So whilst it is a very intriguing and a good deal, they love a Scandinavian over at Brentford. You just kind of maybe go, is it a season too early for him in terms of his rehabilitation? But I do look at Brentford. I think there is just not. They've got a goal scorer. That's the thing. When you look at it down there, you always look at who's going to score you the goals, and you look at Ivan Toney, and you just go, well, he's probably going to get you 15 goals, even in even if in a season where they're playing poor, you would still probably say he can probably get you 15 still, because everything filters through him. And he's such the fulcrum for their attack that even in a poor team, and I'm not saying that Brentford are poor, what I'm saying is that even in a team that would be considered poor, play poor, he could score that many goals because he's just that way inclined. And I do think Brentford have got enough about him again to basically consolidate like they did from what they did last year, keep themselves in the Premier League. And I think with them, they're going to very much be like a Brighton have been for years in that they're going to consistently maybe be there or thereabouts, but they're never probably going to be actually in that much. Well, I think they're probably not going to be in much trouble until the time it comes, should it come. That's kind of how Brentford strike me. But the thing is with Brentford, and the thing that you have to admire, is that they won't abandon their philosophy. And even when they came up, they didn't abandon it totally, but they adapted. And that's the thing. When I look at them, they will adapt. They won't be worried to change things up, and they kind of adopted, in my view, they adopted the idea of, well, you adapt or die, and then they saw that they were struggling, and they adapted it a bit, and they knew if they came up to play their way, they possibly would be exposed and be a bit naive defensively. So I just look at them and go, I think they're fine, because again, having a goal scorer is one of the most important things. You look at them and go, they have a goal scorer.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just comes to, I think, the relegation again. Having a goal scorer that can get you 10 or 15, that's going to win you those points, is massive, which is why I've got Fulham just surviving, and it's why I've got Southampton and Leeds in there, because Bamford, you cannot rely on him with his injury record right now. I think he played like 4 matches in the Premier League last season, and
last year,
and then Southampton, where I don't personally think they've got someone that's going to get them their goals, especially playing, a 4-4-2. The names we've mentioned, Armstrong, the other players they have, I just don't think they will be able to do that. And it's why Bournemouth are in there for me as well. With Forest, it's a bit different because it's just a complete unknown. It's either going to be hit or miss. It's either going to work or it isn't. There's no in between. But yeah, and then
I think is the term, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, let's take a look at our tables here anyway for the kind of mid-table spots, as we've kind of discussed the relegation. You've got teams like Brighton, Crystal Palace, Wolves. You've actually got Brighton 9th, where I've got them 14th. Losing Cucurella and Basuma, what makes you put them so high in your league?
Well, at the moment, they've still got Cucurella.
Yeah, so, sorry. So
he's still there. And they have lost Basuma, but again, they've still got Mwepu. They've got Casides. I can't remember. They bought another midfielder, but I can't remember his name. So they do have good high energy, and every player, if a player goes, they're bringing a player that fits that role. And for me, it's that they can sell players and bring players in because their recruitment is all about finding those players who suit. And if they sell Cucurella, then they're obviously looking at someone like Angelino.
Yeah.
Now, it might be a bit of a punt to say, oh, they're going to go get or they would sign Angelino. But again, people might have said about them taking Cucurella out of Getafe at the time, considering I think even Barca were considering bringing him back. So if they get someone like that, then that's like for like almost. They've got players very comfortable going forward. I think, they've got two new young strikers who, if they hit the ground running, then Brighton might be a team to worry about, because the way I look at Brighton is they're a team that miss the centre forward. Not that it matters against us, because they always find the goals against us.
Of course.
But as is tradition. But you're just looking at if they can find that consistency throughout the season, then it is going to be fine. And even though, as I say, losing Basuma is a big thing, the likes of Wepu, who's going to have another season, is fantastic for him. Casillas has got incredible energy. And again, that's another thing. There's so much energy and kind of pace and just enthusiasm. There's another way of putting it in that team that if they get it right, and when they get it right, they are a very good team and very hard to beat. Not just as we've experienced, but other teams have experienced as well. So they're one of those teams that could be anything from like 8th to like 13th. And I think in that section of the table, that can just change on a coin. I genuinely think from where I put us down, I don't think we will finish outside the top 10 before anyone gets quite worried. I do think that any one of those other teams are so interchangeable. Even Newcastle, I put 7th. They all could just completely change. Like Leicester, you look at them at the moment, and when you look at it on the face of it, potentially losing Maddison, Fofana could be going. Kasper Schmeichel's already gone.
Yeah.
And then you start to think, well, yes, they're going to have a lot of money to spend if they get rid of Fofana and they get rid of Maddison. But then they've got to bring in those players. And as we saw last year, they brought in a couple of players that didn't really hit the ground running, like Sumer. And
Vestergaard, was it?
Yeah, Vestergaard as well, yeah. They didn't seem to get it quite right last year. Daka did quite well, but he didn't play as much, so he should do better. So I kind of look at Leicester and go, at the moment, there's not been enough improvement on last year, and they struggled last year, and they've now just just sold their first team goalkeeper. Now, I don't think they've moved for another one yet. So again, you look at it and go, Leicester looks like the one that you'd kind of go, you would be concerned that they're not going to fulfill what they've been doing in previous seasons because they seem to have regressed rather than progressed.
Yeah, I think with Leicester, I've said it before when Slough and I did a transfer chat, I think Leicester are the most similar comparison to West Ham right now in terms of the personnel and what we're trying to achieve. Leicester last season, everyone saw them as having this shambolic season. They finished 8th and they got to the semi-final of the Conference League. So I think, again, they don't have Europe this season. They can focus, primarily on the Premier League. Again, it's really such a tough one to call because there's still a month left of the window. They could lose Maddison and Fofana, like you say, and Tielemans, for example. But if they don't, they have a fantastic squad. They have a really, really good squad. Barnes, Maddison, Ndidi, Tielemans, Vardy, Daka and Iheanacho. They've got such good options. Defensively, they could be a bit stronger, but Fofana coming back for a full season, if he does stay and does stay fit, is like a brand new sign in itself. So again, losing Kasper Schmeichel, I don't think is the end of the world, to be honest. I don't think he's something to be stressing over. I think they could recruit a goalie within the next month that can be just as good. So yeah, it is really tough to call Leicester. I think I put them pretty high. Yeah, I've put them 8th again, just underneath us. But that is just on me thinking, I don't think Maddison will leave, and it's going to take an absolutely huge offer for Fofana to leave. 80 million, I think, is the figure that they're trying to get. So it's just, yeah, like you mentioned, the Aston Villas, the Crystal Palaces, the Newcastle, Wolves, West Ham, Leicester, those kind of 6 teams, I think many people will have interchange in throughout this season because there's so many different factors. We've got Conference League, we've got a couple of injuries. We don't know what's going to happen through the season. Newcastle's kind of more of an unknown entity. Crystal Palace have been doing some smart but silent business. Wolves, are going to try and adapt and play, what Bruno Lage wants to play in a back four. So there's so many factors. And like you mentioned, I think those kind of teams in and around the mid-table or just below kind of 7th is completely interchangeable, and factors are just going to play a part. So that's why it's prediction. But
no, exactly. I look at Leicester. Leicester are probably the one that of that group I have the most questions around as to what is going to happen. Whereas the others, I think they're probably a little bit more stable in terms of their overall squad, and their key players.
Yeah.
Whereas, as we've just mentioned with Leicester, 3 key players could be leaving, and that's the spine. That's Fofana, obviously Maddison, as well as Tielemans, and that's 2 massive creative outlets potentially gone. And then you've got to find someone of the same quality. Obviously, you can have a lot of money, but doesn't mean you're going to get value necessarily. And again, Fofana is a fantastic young defender. Admittedly, didn't have him for a lot of last season, but he did come back towards the end of the year, and obviously so did their form. But so I just have too many questions around them at the moment to kind of be confident and say, yeah, they'll finish where they did last year. So it is a tricky one, I think, with those guys. And again, also, I understand what you're saying, Rich Michael, but that is a leader they've lost in their dressing room. He is their captain. Vardy is another year older. Yeah. So again, Vardy is Vardy. He could be incredibly kind of.
Yeah, I don't worry about him, to be honest.
No, but he's one of those players that he can be great, but if he's not on it and his pace is starting to deteriorate, then you lose a lot out of what Vardy is, because he is pace. So that deteriorates a bit this year, even by 1 or 2%. That could impact his overall game.
Well, let's move on to the part of this prediction which most people probably tuned in for, and that is West Ham. Let's take a look at where we've all got them. So I've got us in 7th. You've got us just outside in 8th, and Sloth's also got us in 7th. So let's talk about what we're kind of expecting from the season, not just in the Premier League, but also in the cup competitions, and how you kind of see it going, because we've still got a month left of the window. There's so much that still needs to be done, in my opinion. And obviously we've got an injury to, such a key part of what we were trying to do in Agard. So just give me your initial thoughts, why you've put us just outside Conference League place.
Yeah, so one at the moment, I just don't think we have strength. We have improved our squad. So this is where there's a contradiction in what I'm saying. So I think we lack strength, but I do think we are stronger in certain positions than where we were last year.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we do have to get a left back. I'm not convinced that signing Cornet is going to be brilliant for us, because he's going to play left back and play left wing. Brilliant. It gives us multiple positions. Yeah, but we need a player in left back. We need a player in left midfield. So signing one player for 2 positions that we actually need is almost pointless and redundant as a conversation, because he can't play in both positions at once. So
yeah,
it's kind of a redundant conversation. Yes, he can play in all his positions, but he can only play one of them one at a time. So it is kind of, that conversation to me is an irrelevant point. So Cornet looks like he's going to sign. That's great. So that does improve it. That does potentially bring more goals. So if we are necessarily, if Ben Rama's not performing, then we've got someone who can come in and potentially score a goal. Cornet's not performing, then potentially got somebody to come in and create and score a goal as well. And the reason I say create and score is because Cornet only got 1 assist last season. So he had 10 goal contributions in the Premier League. Ben Rama, I think, in total had about 12, 13, something like that, in just the Premier League. So Ben Rama does create more than he scores. So again, we have to look at it in that respect as well, that one is going to possibly create a bit more. We do need a left back. I am not convinced that Cresswell can be our left back another season. I know some think that he is underrated. Fine, that's your opinion. I don't necessarily agree with it. I personally don't. There's a lot of times where stats are peddled out with Cresswell, and I'm just like, yeah, but anyone can pass the ball 20 yards and call it a progressive pass, because that's essentially what a progressive pass is.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's going into a dangerous area, because if you just have to look at how many passes into the final third, yeah, he has a few, but again, you can be passing it 20 yards on the halfway line and going to the final third. And not many crosses that are actually accurate. I think it's 24%. And Ben Johnson, who's called a terrible crosser, has a better delivery record. So go figure. But that's just my hang up.
I don't want us to turn into a Cresswell show.
No. But I do think, left back, we do need better.
Yeah.
Left centre back, obviously we've got Aguerd who's out. So we need cover there. Diop looks like he wants to go. There's no point keeping him around if he wants to go. There's clearly issues on Opbona's fitness.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. He's not played in the last few, first team games. Been playing in under 23s, and also someone commented to me that they had someone there at the game, and throughout the under 23 game, they could just see him not moving comfortably throughout.
Yeah, I mean,
he's not fully fit. Even Dawson's only just come back from injury. He's missed a fair chunk of pre-season. So we currently have one fully fit centre back, and then we just sold a young kid who potentially could have fulfilled that, but we sold him. So, so we do need need that centre back. So I think it's Shalazai is how you say it. He's been linked. That could be a fantastic sign if we get him. It's left-sided centre back, can play left back as well. But really, he's a left centre back and can play in a 4 or a 3. So that's great. Midfield, we know is a problem. We don't really have any competition for Souček. I know some will name Coventry, but again, it feels very convenient that after talks of things are waning with Onana, I think it's part of that is negotiation. I can't see him going to Everton, if I'm being honest. One, I don't see them having the money to do that, and changing priorities as well. But I look at it and go, we don't have someone who can come in to replace Souček. I don't think Coventry is going to do that. Coventry is a good player, but I just find it very convenient now. All of a sudden, he's been praised. The cynical part of me just can't accept that. And I do quite like Coventry, but the cynical part of me can't accept that all of a sudden he has impressed those at the club. And it seems to have come out only after we've had a bid. We've had a bid accepted, and we've run into a kind of a roadblock with a player. So the cynical side of me just get on board with that. And again, when we look at attacking midfield, Fornals has to play centrally this season. He cannot play left side again.
Yeah.
Fortunately, with Cornet coming in, that should
definitely help.
Which is fantastic. But then there lies the problem. We don't have a right-sided player. He can't play if Bowen's injured. So Fornals, because of his flexibility, will probably go there. So those are the frustrations that when you look at spots, there are. Well, yeah, but if he moves to that position, but then what about that? There's loads of open questions around our depth. And I personally, I said it with Sloth before, if we're looking at our attacking midfielders, which we obviously have in Vlasic, Lanzini and Fornals, for me, Manu is the disposable one as such. He is the one that can be sold. He does knit play together very well. I do like the way he kind of knits it together and holds possession. He does that well as an 8. But the problem is he's not penetrative enough with his passing. He's not in the final third. You just got to look at the key passes. He doesn't really create anything that's leading to a shooting opportunity or a goal scoring chance. Again, his goals, I think 5 he scored, but 3 of them were penalties as well. So again, you're attacking midfielder, but you're not in those positions in which to provide a threat, either for a goal or to create. And that's what we are lacking. And we put Fornals there. It's great. I'm more than happy for Fornals to be in that 8-10 role. It's part of a 3, but he's going to need competition. So Vlasic, is he trusted? I don't know. I don't think he's I think probably will go out on loan, if anything. Yeah. I don't see him getting used as a right winger. I don't think he would want to be used as a right winger, and he needs to play because he wants to play the World Cup. So he wants to play. So if he's not going to play, he's not going to want to be here. He's going to want to go on loan. So that's all the negative stuff.
Yeah.
That's all the negative. What I would say is we've finally got some pace on our left-hand side with Cornet. I have reservations about his overall consistency, but he did do well last year for Burnley. He does have good pace, which is what we've been dying and crying out for. We do have, obviously, still Antonio, although he hasn't hit a barn door all pre-season, unless the barn doors were wide open, and he didn't actually hit it through the gap that where barn doors were. But it's Antonio. Antonio can be absolutely awful and then go on a run and score goals. So it's Antonio. Yeah. I just don't read into it because it's Antonio. That's the player he is. We've got Skamaka. He could be incredible. He could be a frustration in the first point. So I can't get past us being 8th at the minute until we finish the window. So I've kind of hedged my bets with us. I do think if we get the window right, I don't see any reason why we couldn't be 6th. Because I put Man United in 8th, but I have no reason to not believe that we couldn't go 6th and United could be in our position, because with United there's so many questions as well. It just comes down to, do we get the right players in? And if we get the right players in and give us the depth, then Moyes finally has a team that he can trust to rotate, which we didn't see last year. And we have 5 subs. So again, having a big squad this year is actually going to mean something. And that's the important thing. It's, if you don't use your squad this season, you are going to get punished. There's no two ways about it this season. Teams are going to get punished if you do not utilise your bench. It's just going to happen. It's just how it is. You can say 4 players ain't playing well, I'm going to bring on 5, and then 3 of those 5 come on and actually do well, then you've immediately improved your team. So I just want to see by the end of the window that we've done it, and I'm obviously biting my tongue on the Onana one because I want to be angry about it, but I'm being level-headed at the moment until it's rejected and we know what figures are the figures, and until we obviously finish the window, because I think we're going into the season without a changed squad for the City game, which is very frustrating. I think it's unfortunate in the sense that Aguerd is injured, because we would have at least had one change. The pursuit of Lingard and probably Broja hasn't also helped that, because it's delayed what we are, because we have let's be honest, we've wasted our time on those 2, which has had a counteract, it's impacted on others. But we can at least say the following week, next week, we are at least going to probably have Skamaka in the squad, or potentially starting if Antonio's still got a knock, which apparently he did have in the last game. We're likely to have Cornet on the bench or starting. So this game was always a free hit against City, so maybe is it a problem that we don't have any new players playing? Possibly not. It's a free hit, right? If we lose it, we lost it, and we all expected to probably lose. So you can kind of go, the signings don't necessarily matter this week, they matter next week. But at the moment, there's a lot of frustration. There's been a lot of things to praise, in my view. The last week, has just sucks that enthusiasm out of you to kind of go, where are we going to go? Because we have looked at players and obviously they've not kind of come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've put us 7th. I would be so much more confident of putting us 7th if Aguerd didn't get injured and we looked like we had a solid pre-season integrating the players we wanted. Like you mentioned there with the Lingard and Broja stuff, completely, delayed everything. Even with the Cornet deal and what's happened with Kostic, it's now got to a point where Cornet won't be ready in time for Sunday and hasn't had, time to settle into the squad. So the biggest thing for me is what Moyes wants to do, because we've seen from the last 2 pre-season games, we've played a back 3. It hasn't been a comfortable back 3. It hasn't been a comfortable watch in terms of how we want to actually play, who's going to play where. Masuaku played in both those games. He's not even here anymore. So
I think those were out of necessity, though, because we had one fit centre-back and we sold the young kid.
I mean, that's exactly my point. You know, we could have got, you know, Divering over Kostic for how long? Probably not to our fault, but it has probably gone on way too longer than it should have. We should have got a yes or no. If a player's waiting on likes of Juventus to come, do we really want that player in the first place? So for me,
that's a bit on Moyes as well. I'm not saying he's Divering. I'm not.
I am.
I'm not going to fall into that trap and say he's Divering. I just think is when he finds someone he likes, he will not entertain other options until that player is off the table.
I'd say that's Divering though. That is exactly what he was known for.
I would say, you could argue that's him being steadfast and having the conviction and the bravery to believe in his own opinion or his own choice and backing that. No, you could say it's Divering. Some people say, "Oh well, he's not making decisions on other players." It's like, yeah, but he's made a decision on that player. That's his decision. That's the player he wants. Now, until that player says, "I'm not signing," his response is, "Well, I'm waiting for him because he's who I want. I'm not going to sign someone I don't want because he's not giving me an answer just yet." So
yeah.
I think Divering comes in. Now, again, I don't really want to go into the depths of the Onana deal, but in the sense of we bid multiple times, we didn't get into conversations, and then we go, "Oh, actually, are they actually worth it?" You should have been having this conversation up front. You should be maybe going, what's the worst case scenario? If this bid gets accepted, what is the worst case scenario in terms of personal terms where we say, that's not for us? So, and they should be having those conversations with the agent beforehand as we're getting through to that point of getting accepted. So when we get there, we're actually then not going, actually, no, now we've put it all together with the fee. Now we've put it together with all of this stuff. We don't want it. So that to me then comes across as Divering because it's like, well, was Divering and it's not doing your due diligence, and that in itself is incredibly frustrating. So unless we've been blindsided, that's the other thing we've got to consider. Maybe we're blindsided, but I don't think we've divered as such in the league. I think we've shown on two deals in particular a big level of incompetency. I think Onana at the moment looks like we've been a bit incompetent. The Danjuma one was just an absolute clusterfuck of a situation and the way that played out, to the point of we end up insulting the player and insulting the agent, basically.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it is harsh to say he's Divering because, you know, we signed Ega really early on. The one thing that's just so frustrating, it hasn't just been Moyes. You know, it's been notorious with West Ham and transfers, that where we tend to wait around and mess around with transfers for so long, trying to get, you know, the best deal, which is, you know, you can understand it. You can definitely understand it. But there's definitely been times from the board where they've tried to tweak things at the end and it ends up just being a disaster. But in terms of Moyes wanting the players he wants, that's what we want as a fan. We want to back the manager. We want him to have a say in who's coming into the club and who isn't, because otherwise we'll just end up with like a 2017 situation where Bilic wasn't given the players he wanted. And yeah, I mean, as you can see here with Tyler saying, you can sugarcoat it, but it's considered Divering when the conviction to focus on certain players he wants prevents the club from signing other players when unable to sign the priority.
Yeah, no, I respect what Tyler's saying, but again, there's also a contradiction in there. We're saying it's been dressed up, or it's Divering, but then again, it's the point of, but you're also saying he has a conviction to a player. So he's not divered on that player. He's made a steadfast decision that that's his player. The divering is then, do we continue with other players, or do we move for other targets in other positions? That I would call different, and that, you know, wholeheartedly I can potentially agree with, because we haven't necessarily gone for other targets whilst waiting on that main player. So that I would say is different. The saying I want Kostic and I don't really want to entertain any other bids, that's not this differing. That's a steadfast decision, right or wrong. It's the not moving on other positions where, I can wholeheartedly, I can stand there if anyone go, fair enough, that's different, because you're not moving on other positions that are needed because you're waiting and getting that answer. But again, just to devil's advocate, is if the player you want, signing that player impacts on those other targets in terms of budget, then again, you have to kind of say that, well, if we're going to say we need to back Moyes, we need to trust Moyes, then you need to kind of also go, well, if he wants that player and the budget is then dependent on that player, for everyone else, then arguably, then you do have to wait. which isn't
Yeah.
a great process. And I can understand why everyone gets frustrated and why Dithering comes out. But maybe we don't sometimes take a step back and look at the wider thing of, well, maybe this signing has a direct impact on other positions and the budget that's available. And therefore, as this is the priority player, this is the preference to wait on because of the impact it has down the line. And if you go for those other players, then he doesn't get his top target. So
yeah, I mean, for me, there's a few things. So for Moyes, in terms of this whole thing, right, just talking about transfers to end this, Moyes has said it himself. He can get it's so easy to go and sign a player, but it's hard to get the player that you want. And, you have to get it right. Look at Liverpool. They have not just gone and signed players for the sake of it. Everyone's been saying they need a midfielder this summer for the past 2 seasons. They haven't done it because it's not available right now, and they've been smart in how they've done it. It happened with Konate recently when they couldn't get him in January. So they said, right, we'll wait till the summer and we'll bring in someone now on loan and just sort the solution there. So for me, yes, I agree that, back Moyes 100%, back what he wants to do and only pick the players he wants. There's no point going and signing random players because we'll end up back to square one. But there are...
Well, I understand. I wasn't attack going for you as well. So fair play, mate, and taking it the way it was intended. So well done, mate.
But yeah, I mean, it's just... I think you can see it both ways. We want to get it right. We want the transfer strategy to be correct, but also it can backfire, which we've seen with Lingard's situation, which was just absolutely crazy. And everyone could see he was kind of taking us on a ride, which we didn't need to be on. And there were other options that could play there. So let's put that aside. For me, the biggest thing going into the season and what is preventing me from putting us, even higher than 7th, like you mentioned, into 6th place is the system and the belief in what we're going to play next season and having the right players for it. Because, like you mentioned, Cornet's a very good signing, a very versatile signing, but we don't want him to be a player that's going to be picking in at left back, picking in at left wing back, playing at left wing if he needs to.
Cornet signing ahead of Kostic kicks the 3-4-3 formation almost into touch as one of the primary formations. I think it pretty much now confirms that it's going to be a 4, and we have a flexible player that we can put as a wing back who's attacking, and then maybe Ben Rama in front. So I think it probably kicks that into touch. I think we're more be able to play now 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1.
You know what? I really wouldn't be surprised if we play.
Oh no, nothing would surprise me.
No, I really. That's the biggest thing with me. With what it could either, especially with Conference League as well. This month is so crucial for us. I've put us 7th because I think we're going to get it. I have faith that we're going to get it right, and we're going to bring in a centre back. We're going to bring in a left back that we need on top, and bring in Cornet for an attacking option, and not see him as someone that's going to cover at left back. So I have faith that we are going to make 2 or 3 more, really good signings. And for me, it'd be nice to have an attacking midfielder to come in and play in that, number 10 role if needed. But I don't think it's a necessity for this window. I think we can play a 4-3-3 with 4 nows in the middle. We can be flexible with it if we want to be a bit more of a 4-2-3-1. Vlasic can play in that number 10 role if he sticks around, which I hope he does. Then you look at, it would be nice to have another option on the right, but, Cornet played right wing as well. Antonio can go out there. We've got Scamacca that then can, play through the middle. We do have options up front. We do have the options if we need to. And we've shown last season we can score goals. We can, scoring 3 against Liverpool, 3 against Chelsea. That wasn't a problem until the second half of the season when Antonio started to dry up. But we've got Scamacca now. And the whole point of bringing him in is to eliminate that, So, yes, we could have been better right now. We could be in a better position. But we could be in a much worse position,
Oh, exactly. Didn't get anyone in. I don't think we got anyone in apart from Areola, I think, at this point last season. So, as you say, we could be in a worse position. I think it's within our nature to be pessimistic. We're West Ham fans.
Of course. I mean, when something like the Onana situation happens, and especially with Lingard and Kostic, it can be so frustrating because, you start getting excited about how they're going to play in the team, and then it doesn't happen.
Well, no, I have to start preparing a thread, and then it gets really annoying when you start doing it, and then you have to stop it because things are not progressing. Just on a personal level, it's really annoying.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway from this is transfers, transfer links will come and go. There's other players, there's other targets we've probably got that Moyes wants, that we can go and, inquire about. And there might be another name that kind of comes out in the next few days. And we're like, oh, that's a really exciting signing. Let's try. Hopefully we pull this off. And we've forgotten about Onana. We've forgotten about Kostic. So again, it's going to depend on what we do. But I see us as 7th. I think in terms of the Conference League, I think we'll do okay. I think we should get out the group. We should be targeting sort of quarters, semi-finals at least.
Just get through the playoffs first.
Yeah, that is true. I mean,
it's us. We all remember Astra Gugu.
Yeah. Oh god.
So let's just get through the playoffs. I'm not even going to talk about Conference League. Playoff to get through because it is just West Ham. Although I will say the most West Ham thing has happened though, us being in the Conference League, in that apparently we will not have to pay for the extra games at the London Stadium because when we signed the contract as a competition, it didn't exist. So there is no billing, there is no structure in which to set against that competition. So arguably it's on the taxpayer for West Ham to play those games at London Stadium. God. How West Ham of a situation is that? That in itself is just West Ham in a nutshell. It's just
Sullivan's there like that. Hope we finish 7th again.
Gold and Sullivan are doing that because now they're just going, we've got all of the profit now. They're
definitely sat there like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like whack the loan up by another 5%, Dave. We've got it covered with these games now.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Let's not mention Conference League because in 2 or 3 weeks' time we could be out. So let's focus on let's finish our prediction for the table anyway and focus on that top 6. It looks like we've all got the big 6 in there. There's a few different ones. We've all got Man United 6th. We spoke about Man United a bit as well. Bit of a transition. The biggest talking point around kind of the top 2 speak for themselves. We'll get onto them in a minute. But you've got Chelsea, Spurs, and Arsenal. All could be interchanged, and they have been interchanged by all of us here. So I've got Spurs at 5th, Chelsea at 4th, Arsenal 3rd. You've got Chelsea at 5th, Arsenal at 4th, and Spurs at 3rd. And Sloth's got Arsenal at 5th, Spurs at 4th, and Chelsea at 3rd. So that in itself, shows how different opinions can come from these 3 teams in this season. And let's talk about Spurs first. You've got them 3rd.
Yeah.
What do you see from them that's better than Arsenal and Chelsea?
I don't think they've done necessarily anything sparkling in the transfer window. I think they've made smart deals. Like Perisic knows Conte, knows exactly what Conte wants him to do. Also, the guy will get you goals from left wing back. It's just how he is. His goal is going to get you maybe a goal or 2. They made smart signing of Basuma. Obviously, they've got Richarlison, so he's likely to play on the right-hand side of a front 3, potentially, if they go for the 3-4-3 formation. So, again, I don't particularly like Richarlison, to be honest. I think he's a little overrated, but he is a decent player, and he will suit the Spurs falling over at anyone looking at you kind of thing. So he will fit that model perfectly, I think. I just think that they've out of that lot, they have the best strike partnership, or just the best strikers. In all honesty, Arsenal do not have a strike team. If you just look at 2 of them and don't even include Charlison, their strike force is better than Arsenal's, than Chelsea's. There's just you can't. No matter how anyone wants to dress it up, it's just a fact. Them 2 last year, between them were like 40-odd goals or something. Son almost won Golden Boot. So if you're looking at those hard, cold facts of who's going to score, they've got 2 players who are probably going to bring them 40 goals in just those 2 alone. You look at the other guys, and Chelsea at the moment don't even have a striker. So, other than Brozier. But is Brozier going to get a chance? I don't know. He feels a bit of a political pawn at the moment in the Chelsea game. But they don't necessarily have a centre forward as such. Looking to get rid of Werner, it's all on Havertz to do that. Arsenal got Eddie Nketiah, but again, apparently looking for a striker. But you look at those 3 and you go, well, none of those guys are scoring goals. Chelsea gone for a massive change in defence. So Chelsea are Chelsea, right? They probably will get Champions League because it's just Chelsea, and they'll probably grind out results. as they do. I think Azpilicueta's just signed an extension as well. So
Yeah.
again, that's the same kind of thing. They maybe get in Cucurella, which is again seems a bit weird when they've already got Ben Chilwell there. But I suppose if they're getting rid of Alonso, it's again they need competition in those spots, and it's Chelsea. They'll just hold and farm players. It's what they do.
Yeah.
So, Arsenal had a decent season last year, but again, Arsenal could very easily be fifth. They could be sixth, and it's the same with Man United. Man United could be sixth. They could be eighth. They could even be in the top four. We just don't know how they're going to work under Ten Hag. And at the moment, the only reason I wouldn't consider United there is because there is clear friction between Ten Hag and Ronaldo, and whether he buys into that or whether he just buys into just getting on with it and not pouting like a baby, and just kind of gets on with it and honours his contract properly and loves the club like he says he does. Arsenal obviously got, as Taylor said, they've got Jesus, but he's never necessarily scored a huge amount of goals. He does have good movement and so on, and he will give Arsenal that striker. But again, it's not the levels of Harry Kane and Son, and that pains me to say it because it's Tottenham, but they arguably, outside of Man City and Liverpool, that is the best strike force in the Premier League. It's just, I can't hear it any other way. It's just, it's horrible to say it, but it is probably the best strike force outside of the top two.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have Arsenal third. I have Spurs finishing fifth, and yes, they have a great strike force in Son, Kane, Kulusevski, and Richarlison as backup or whatever. But for me, other than that, right, I just think, Basuma's a good signing, and he'll suit their formation very well. But defensively, again, are they better than, say, Arsenal are going to be next season? In my opinion, no. Chelsea is a bit of an unknown one, but my prediction is based on, I think they will sign a centre-back that will come in and slot into that back five for how Tuchel wants to play. Cucurella looks like he's going to be going there as well, so another good option. And, Raheem Sterling, probably another signing that will go unnoticed right now amongst all of it. But, that's a really good signing. 27 years old, proven in the Premier League, that famous line that everyone likes to say when they sign someone. But for me, out of those three teams, out of Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal are the ones to watch this season. I think, it can be easy to get carried away by their pre-season form, but they have such a, it does hurt me to say this because I'm not their biggest fan, but they have a very exciting squad. And what Arteta's been doing and building over the past 2-3 seasons, there were question marks, 2 8th place finishes, didn't get top 4 again last season. They have spent an incredible amount of money in the past 3 years. And if they don't get top 4 now, that is a failure, especially considering they didn't have any European football last season. And, they went out of the FA Cup and Carabao Cup very early to focus on the league. So that would be the one thing with Arsenal, is how they're going to deal with Europe. But how I'm kind of comparing Arsenal and Spurs, for example, Spurs are in the Champions League. They can't afford to really rest players for those nights in the group stage, whereas Arsenal can. They can easily get through their European group by playing their second string, in my opinion, and they've done that in the past. Spurs are going to want to stay in that competition. They're going to want to stay in the Champions League. They're going to have to play Harry Kane, Son. They can't afford to rest them. So it's whether they can,
You've maybe discounted is you've looked at the players. And granted, Arsenal do have some exciting young players. But when you look in the dugout, one of them is a proper full-on winner and will not take anything other than that in Conte. And I think what we saw in Spurs when he first took over to what they were at the end of the season showed that they were starting to get what he wants. I think now again he's brought in other players that know him and knows what he wants. There'll be a stronger proposition, and I think that sometimes we get bogged down into the players and systems and so on, but sometimes we just don't even look at what's on the sideline. And you have someone who's very enigmatic and is absolutely a furious competitor, and that feeds into a team. You look at Arteta, who go, "Oh, but he's a winner." It's like, but the thing is, it's a completely different type of intensity. Like Arteta basically moans for 90 minutes trying to get referees to give his team stuff. At times it's like a baby throwing his toys out the pram. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. And when it doesn't, it looks like a baby throwing his toys out. When it works, then you just go, I guess that's good. That's good management from the manager to get a ref to focus on certain things and do things. And I think with Conte, he's going to be getting into the players. And I think Spurs again, they've bought people like Perisic, obviously Bentancur, Kulusevski. So they're used to winning titles with Juventus, or at least challenge for titles. So again, they're buying these players that are used to the top end and that high pressure.
Same with Arsenal though, with Zinchenko, Jesus, it's
yeah,
the same thing.
But again, I understand where you're coming from. I don't think they've got a manager who's used to doing that. Although he played in these good teams and was under Pep, I think Conte is a class apart. And I think in any other time in the Premier League, if you look at the managers, you'll be like, what? Pep, Klopp, and Conte all in the same thing. You'd think that they're the three best teams in the country. So when you kind of look at it in that respect, and you look what's on the sidelines, you kind of go, that in itself is potentially worth a couple of points. And it sounds stupid to say that, but he's tactically the nous. And you've got to remember, they did the double on Man City last year, and they did it easily.
Yeah, so, I think with Conte, there's no doubting that he's a better manager than Arteta. I'm not going to dispute that at all. Just for me, from the facts I mentioned about Champions League, and I think they're two completely different teams. That's why it's so hard. Arsenal might start with a back three. They've played that in pre-season as well, but they have the flexibility to play a 4. Do Spurs have the flexibility to play a 4? Yes, they do in certain games, but overall, it's not what Conte is going to want to do. And it's same with Thomas Tuchel as well, playing that back 3. So
I think Ramsdale will make a couple of mistakes as well. I know he had a good season last year, but
players are going to make mistakes. It's hard to call, but Arsenal. I think the biggest question mark about Arsenal is those two things. It's the inexperience in their squad, and it's also the manager situation, because of the 3 managers of Tuchel, Conte, and Arteta, he is at the bottom right now. You can't put him above them. What I like about Arteta is, from what I've seen and what he's trying to do at Arsenal, is very much something that I think a lot of football fans would want their club to kind of go through, in terms of bringing through a certain profile of player, adapting to play a certain way. And it looks like he's got the fundamentals to be a very, very elite level coach. Whether we'll see that this season, I don't know. I personally think, yes, we will. But it's very easy, to sit here and say that. But Arsenal could go and, lose 2 of their opening 3 games, and people are starting to question him as a manager again. We saw that last season. But it depends on, who they can keep fit, because a lot of the times their crucial players have got injured. Thomas Partey and Kieran Tierney, 2 players last season that, were big players for them.
Partey might be very lucky to still have a career after what's been coming out. So
exactly. I mean, we can't really comment on it at the moment, but it could be, it could be that he doesn't end up there next season as well. So there's a lot of factors again. I just couldn't put Spurs in the top 4. I couldn't do it.
So you did it out of spite.
Yeah, let's just go with that. I just did it out of spite. But let's finish this up anyway with the top 2. We've got it all the same across the board. Liverpool in second and City top. Is there anything that you could see that could slightly change? Do you think it'll be as close as it was last season, or do you think City will kind of pull away a little bit?
See, it's tricky, isn't it? Because if you go by the game in the Charity Shield, you say, Liverpool's got the head start on City. But, I think whenever you look at the Premier League, you just have to say that whoever finishes above City wins the league. I think it's as simple as that. They're almost such a complete team. The thing that I like about City as well is Pep doesn't suffer any falls in terms of the transfer market. Things weren't going with Cucurella, and he just went, that's it, I'm done. Get me someone else. Like that, I think some people need to probably learn from. But it's just, right, he's my target. I'm not gonna get him. He's taking too much time. I'm not messing around. I want a target. I need him by this date. Go get me someone. So, he doesn't mess around the switches and moves full steam ahead. Now they've got 2 proper centre forwards. Obviously, that's not a dig at Jesus, but Jesus did prefer playing right wing, and he even said that he really enjoyed playing there as opposed to playing up front. I think he got a bit more freedom. With Haaland, I think everyone knows what to potentially expect from Haaland. He is a goal machine, so give him half a chance and he will potentially score. He may to have a little bit of time to breathe and to kind of get into it. Alvarez is an interesting one. He could be phenomenal. He could be he may take his time. But remember, I think Jesus' first season for Man City, he was exceptional. Mm-hmm. So it could have that same impact because he's completely unknown and it just comes in. But also the fact that we know what City are like. If they're losing games, now they have two centre forwards. They can just chuck on who are used to finishing. And whilst they still have De Bruyne, it's just it is what it is. They've probably got one of the best defences, like Liverpool. Liverpool, you look at going losing Mane is huge. Darwin Nunez is going probably to be hit and miss throughout the season because he's just that kind of player. He's still incredibly raw. They've spent a lot of money on him. Expectations are going to be very high. And there are probably going to be games where he's going to massively frustrate and other games where he's going to look brilliant. I just think that's just Darwin Nunez, to be perfectly honest. So with them, you kind of look at it and go, the defence again, absolutely rock solid. Midfield, well, that's actually starting to age a little bit now. So, I'm not saying that it's creaking and it can't still perform, but over the course of the season and the amount of games that they are going to play, then you are asking a lot of the likes of, say, Curtis Jones and so on to come in and step up. So that's probably the area you would say could potentially hinder them. I know Man City have also lost some players and they do have their midfield is legit as well. But I think with City as well, and if they still keep Bernardo Silva, then that's great. But that's potential that could obviously go. So both of them, maybe you would probably say, if anything, if they're going to pick a weak spot in those teams, it's probably going to be that potentially at centre midfield. But I don't know how you can say City's weak spot could be centre midfield when you can have Rodri there, you can have De Bruyne. But I think that's how strong their team is that you look at it and go, well, that's not weak. That's not weak. That's not weak. Maybe the left side is the only weak, and the left back is the only real spot in the City team where you kind of go, there's a weakness. And even Liverpool, when I say the midfield is probably the weak spot, it's not weak at all. It's still an absolutely quality team. So I don't see what Liverpool can do at the moment to get above City. Other than in those head-to-heads, they need to win those. They have to win those. The new, I guess, Liverpool-Manchester derby. That is the game where if whoever comes out on top on those two games probably is the team that goes on to win the league. So it's a tricky one because they're both phenomenal teams. It's just they are the top two. And it can interchange, but I think it's hard to look past City still just because Pep just seems to know how to get the best out of some of those players, in particular De Bruyne, who was phenomenal at times last season.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. That's exactly why I put them. The only thing I'm going to say is Bernardo Silva, if he does go, that is absolutely massive. I think that will probably tip my opinion towards Liverpool.
I probably agree with you on that. I think if Bernardo Silva goes, that's a huge thing for him because him in the middle with Rodri last season was fantastic at times. Yeah,
I mean, as well, the only argument for Liverpool, we saw them beat them 3-1. That game could have gone either way, so I'm not looking into that really. City had the chances to win it as well. For me, it all depends on you look at Liverpool's defence. They've now got Van Dijk coming into this season fully fit and fresh, and they've also got Matip and Konate and Alisson in goal. They have that spine that you can take a Van Dijk, Matip, or Konate, one of those out, and you've still got an unbelievable centre back pairing. With City, I think it starts to creak when you take a Laporte out or a Diaz out, and you bring in someone like Stones, or when we saw Fernandinho playing there last season. So yeah, I think that's the one key aspect. It could come down to injuries at the back for City, because when we played them last season, and they came so close against Villa as well. They had those problems at the back, and we did exploit it. And they probably should have won the match based on the second half, but we also had chances as well with Antonio. So Yeah, I think it's hard to bet against City. You can't really. So yeah, we've gone with this anyway. This is our final look at the Premier League. We'll come back to this at the end of the season and laugh at how wrong we were. But
Yeah.
yeah, let us know what your guys' predictions are in the comments. If you want to leave your 1 to 20 or over on our Twitter page, drop us a tweet so we can have a look. See if you agree with us or disagree. But let's end the video, Mike, anyway, with some cup predictions, just real quickly. We've got four, so there's 3 cups. So we've got the FA Cup, Carabao Cup, Champions League, and we've also got the Premier League Golden Boot, who we think is going to be top goal scorer. So let's take a look at those. Slough also did those, so we'll go through them as well. But it looks like we've all got different FA Cup winners, which is nice. So I've gone with City, you've gone with Chelsea, and Slough went with Liverpool. For the Carabao Cup, I've gone Spurs, you've gone City, Slough's gone Arsenal, so all different again. All looks like we're getting Man City for that Champions League, but there's one slight difference on the Golden Boot. And now I've seen Slough's answer. I don't know why I didn't put it, because Greg Dawson for Premier League Golden Boot. Can you look past him?
You know what? I think I could. It's just a knack, just a feeling that I have that Harry Kane might just pip him to the post. But having said, I know we've all put Harry Kane, but it's funny, really, isn't it, considering that Heung-min Son was almost the Golden Boot winner, and not one of us put him in there.
Yeah, and Salah as well.
Yeah, and the thing when I look at the cup, Chelsea are always do brilliantly in the cup, and I just find it hard to not believe that they won't. If they don't do well in the league, Chelsea are that type of team that they may do not as good in the league, but they'll get a cup.
Yeah.
City, they're going to be upset that they've lost their cup for one season, so they're probably going to want their cup back, which is the Carabao. And just the law of averages, right? City have got to get. They've got.
It has to happen, doesn't it? You can't not put them.
You feel it's going to happen at some point, and this season with the inclusion of the 2 new strikers. Again, I think, like we've said about the Premier League, Bernardo Silva is going to be a huge piece in that. But knowing Pep, he'll probably go and pull someone out of nowhere to take his role, and they will be incredible. But you know what? Just on a separate note, Man City have done brilliantly this window. They've bought, they've constantly talked about ruining the window and spending all this money, but they have spent small on Haaland, relatively, in terms of his actual fee.
Yeah.
Alvarez was a small fee, and they've gone to sell players for big money. So actually, they're basically not spending anything. So the thing that's been put to Liverpool for ages, but look how brilliant they are, their net spend. Man City have just basically flipped that back at them now, because it's like we've just got to spend £100 million on a striker.
Yeah, I mean, even even the kind of the fringe players that they sold to Southampton, for example, for like 10 million and 15 million, it makes a huge difference. And looking at it, yes, they might have spent 50 million on Phillips or whatever, but they've sold Sterling for nearly 50 million, they've sold Jesus for 50 million, they've sold Zinchenko for 30. So I agree with that point. I think, putting Man City for the Champions League, we've all got that. It just has to happen one year, and I would be kicking myself if I didn't put them and it happened. I think I put them for the past, I think I've put them for like 3 or 4 years now, and it just hasn't happened. I think they'll win one of the domestic cups. It could be the Carabao, it could be the FA Cup. I think it'll be the FA Cup because they haven't really won that in a few years. It's probably time they won it, and Conte, I can see him, finally getting Spurs a trophy, unfortunately, and I think it'll be something like the Carabao Cup, not the Champions League, before anyone starts putting that in the air. But Harry Kane, top goal scorer, he's gonna thrive under Conte with the players he's got around him. It's hard to look past him. You could put like a Haaland or a Salah, but gone with Harry Kane, and Slough's gone with Dawson. So that's gonna pretty much sum up our predictions. Some interesting ones there. There's a lot of debate around who's going to go down this season. I think I'm really excited for not just the top end of the table, but the bottom as well, because Forest being back in the Prem, Fulham and Bournemouth again coming up, see how they perform, and then the likes of Everton and Leeds and Brentford all could be in that mix, and it's very unpredictable as to what's going to happen. Not only that, but the mid-table part can seem a bit dull to some people, but you've now got teams like Villa spending money. You've got teams like Wolves that have been established in that top 10 now. Crystal Palace again making some good signings, so it makes it really interesting. And I'm hoping that we see an exciting top 4 race, top 6 race, but we'll see. Hopefully it's not Spurs, but I guess we'll agree to disagree on that one, Mike. But yeah. Any final thoughts for the season going into it, whether that's West Ham or just Premier League in general?
I think this year could be an incredibly tight season. Loads of teams have invested. I never feed into all of the bravado you see from other teams going, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Our players are better than your players. Quite frankly, I couldn't care less what anyone else has to say about West Ham because we've been told we're this and we're that for the past 2 years, and look what we've done when we've been told that these teams are better than us in most cases. Yeah. So, quite frankly, I don't care. My focus is on my club and what my club can do. And I think we've made good progress in terms of how we've, by and large, worked in the transfer window. We've had probably 3 deals where you kind of hang your head slightly. Danjuma possibly being one, Lingard, and potentially Onana one. But hopefully these are lessons we are learning over the next few years that we are going to obviously improve on. So I think that, again, as long as we can continue to improve, I do think we have a chance in the Conference League. I do think we are potentially going to be one of the favourites should we get into the group stage. And to be honest, quite rightly, we should be. And we should feel like we should be a favourite and we should probably feel like we should win it. I don't think that's an arrogance or something arrogant of us to believe that. We should believe that after what we did last year. But again, that is dependent on us getting the signing. So I think what we all possibly need to do is just maybe relax when we see links, not get excited, which is incredibly hard to do. We all do that. And if we do see speed bumps as a deal goes through, is not to immediately react and just to wait. At the end of the day, we still have about a month left of the window. So let's see where we are there before really judging whether it's a success or not. I'm trying to be level-headed throughout this, and at times I've really wanted to kind of just go off as to this is not good or this is really great. So I'm trying to be level-headed on the window, and it is a bit of a struggle sometimes. But I'm willing to wait until the end of the window to see where we get to. And I think if we get this window right, and by right, what I mean is if we can get a left back, it looks like we're going to get a left winger, so that not maybe the left winger that I would want, but it's still a quality left winger. Then for me, it just means that what we need is that little bit of creativity in the middle of the park. Yeah. And that does then mean someone will need to go. But that's fine. That's just how life is in football. We can't be sentimental about players. At the end of the day, if you need someone to score and create goals and they're not doing it, then someone has to go to come in to replace them. It's just a simple, cold matter. And as long as we can get a defender to replace Diop, which it looks like we may if we go back in, then I think we're in a really strong position. And the thought that we finish 8th could be a distant memory. We actually finish higher. So there's a lot of things to be positive about for our season. There's a lot of things that we still need to do. And I can understand people feeling that maybe we're unprepared. But we also got to acknowledge there's been a bit of bad luck in terms of, say, with Aguerd. That has maybe hindered a part of that preparation. Yeah. I think we can, depending on how we play against City and how we play against Forest, then I think that's when we can say about our preparedness. But pre-season wasn't necessarily bad. It wasn't great. We only lost 1 game, I think, through the whole pre-season. Yes, it was a shambles, but it was a shambles after we lost our main centre-back. So I think we can kind of maybe just kind of, draw a line under that one and say there are reasons behind it. So I think, let's just go at the season. It's going to be a good one. It being West Ham, they're going to be ups, they're going to be downs. There are going to be moments where we savour and there are going to be moments that we literally want to bury our head in the sand. So we just have to enjoy the ride, see where it goes. And at the end of the season is going to be the true proof in the pudding as to how good this summer window was. And how good this team really is. I do think we have a nucleus of a very good team. I think the right signings can make it a great team. And then once we get what Moyes wants, let's maybe we'll see something shiny and gleaming being lifted above our captain's head. maybe
Maybe.
maybe let's be positive and say maybe this is the season. Maybe this is a year where our dreams do not fade and die.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's easy to be a bit deflated when transfer news is going on, but we've got to remember the squad we've got right now hasn't really changed. We've just added to it and improved it. Yes, there's gaps, but we've got a very good squad still. We've got some really, really good players in our team. We've got City first game, so it's going to be tough. But then we've got Forest, Brighton, Villa before Spurs. At the very end of August. So yes, we need to wait this month to see what happens in the transfer window. But I think with the squad we already have, looking at Forest, Brighton, and Villa in particular, that'll be also telling as to where we're kind of at as a squad right now and what we want to do, because we should be getting, maybe 7 points from those 3 games, if we're serious about finishing the top 6 or 7 again. So yes, we need to be cautiously optimistic, but remain optimistic because we've made some really good signings already. Cornet, another good signing in my opinion, and it looks like we're going to be making 2 or 3 more deals as well. So remain positive. Don't worry if Man City beat us. It's expected. And like you mentioned, hopefully we'll see something special this season, whether that's a domestic trophy or in Europe, and hopefully in the Premier League we perform as well. But yeah, that's pretty much our predictions across the board. Sloth couldn't be here, but we showed his stuff as well. Before we sign out, make sure to go follow us on Twitter at Babbling Irons. We're closing in on 2,000 followers now, I think. And all of the players that we're linked with, we'll do scout reports for those as well. Maybe we'll do one on Cornet, or the centre back we're linked with, Salzai, however you say that. Because there's probably a lot of West Ham fans, including myself, that don't know much about him. So it'd be good to for you guys to learn a bit more about him if it does sign for West Ham. But yeah, I mean, thanks for listening. It's been a long one, but hopefully you've enjoyed. Always exciting talking about predictions. Premier League's back tomorrow. Really exciting for that game at Selhurst Park. So yeah, we'll do a Man City prediction video either tomorrow or Saturday. And we'll give you a bit more of like a tactical analysis of how we think we're going to set up, a predicted XI, that kind of thing, and maybe look at areas of Man City that we can exploit, or look to get in behind, or look to capitalize on. So yeah, I mean, again, thank you for 200 subscribers. Just hit that really good milestone for us. We've only been doing this a couple of months, and the support you guys have shown on the channel has been really good. So yeah, massive thanks from all of us. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep giving you guys content each week. And I guess there's one thing left for us to say, Mike. Come on, you Irons.